Insurrection, a violent uprising against a government, is considered a grave crime. Yet when Biden ended his speech, he said, "President Trump, step up. Step up to the plate and do the right thing?" Are you kidding? Trump was the chief inciter of the action.
And even if he's holding the knife up, yelling at the cops and shaking his hands around, so what?
Exactly.
No one can say that they have a reasonable belief that they are in fear for their own safety.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. This program will feature an interview with Mark Arons, the attorney for the Soulemane family, whose 19-year-old son was killed by state troopers on January 15th of last year. You'll learn a lot that's new. But first, a comment about the attempted insurrection. That's what Joe Biden called it during his speech while the storming of the Capitol was going on. Insurrection, a violent uprising against a government, is considered a grave crime. Yet when Biden ended his speech, he said, "President Trump, step up. Step up to the plate and do the right thing?" Are you kidding? Trump was the chief inciter of the action, telling people for months to come to the Capitol to overturn the election. Biden also said, "This is not who we are. What we are seeing is a small number of extremists dedicated to lawlessness." Well, it wasn't a small number. The Washington Mall was filled from the Capitol steps to the Washington Monument. That's tens of thousands of people who wanted Trump to stay in power, knowing full well he had lost the election. These were tens of thousands of people who were all jammed together, unmasked, during a pandemic. In short, raving fanatics. Maybe only 1,000 marched into the Capitol building, but make no mistake, the radical right has a very large base in this country. And let us not kid ourselves. The Washington political class fully supports mob actions overthrowing governments, just not in this country. They bless coups or instigate them all over the world, most lately in Bolivia and Honduras. Also consider the conduct of the law and order authorities in D.C., particularly the Capitol Police. Watch this from Democracy Now!
Lawmakers are calling for probes into the Capitol Hill police after officers were seen moving barricades for Trump supporters and taking selfies with members of the right-wing mob.
As NPR put it, surprisingly few police stood in the way. Protests had been expected for days, but police appeared unprepared for an actual insurrection and not even prepared to keep all the doors locked. Video showed police calmly talking with attackers after they moved into the building. Of course, D.C. cops do know how to use force. When black people and their allies protest, D.C. police and federal security forces show they are masters of the dark arts. I suppose a few people will be fired for incompetence or demoted, but we cannot expect a police force to be the guardians of democracy. Let me give you an example of how an insurrection was defeated. Go back 100 years to Germany. The uprising I'm talking about was called the Kapp Putsch. Putsch is German for insurrection. In 1920, a group of military leaders and a civil servant named Kapp tried to overthrow the government. Soldiers started marching on Berlin. The defense minister met with the top generals and told them to defend the government. But all of them refused. And soldiers soon occupied Berlin, the German capital. The German president and government ministers had to flee, but they sent out a plea for a general strike. And the unions and the working class as a whole responded enthusiastically. 12 million workers went on strike, and almost nothing was kept running, not gas, not water, not electricity. Government workers walked out. Germany was paralyzed. And in a few days, the leaders of the Putsch fled the country. How about present USA labor leaders? Well, the AFL-CIO on its website said what happened on the 6th was a coup, but didn't call on workers to do anything at all. Pretty pathetic. There are 15 million workers in unions. They should be at the heart of any resistance to fascist madmen. Working people, we need to get organized and educated, because the next radical right insurrection may be more competent and infinitely more dangerous. Now for that interview about the killing of Mubarak Soulemane. I'm speaking now to Mark Arons. He's a partner in Miller Rosnick, a firm of attorneys in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and he's representing the family of Mubarak Soulemane, who was killed January 15th, 2020, almost exactly a year ago. And we're going to talk about the lawsuits and representation. Thanks for speaking with me.
Happy to be here this morning.
So who is being sued, and what are you contending in these lawsuits?
Well, actually, right now, just to set things straight a bit, there are no lawsuits pending at the moment. The only legal action pending is the claim against the state of Connecticut, which is now pending before the State Claims Commission in Hartford. And the reason we haven't commenced any lawsuits is because we are awaiting the report from the state's attorney, which I'm expecting any day now, regarding whether or not the state troopers involved will be prosecuted. And we haven't commenced the lawsuits because a lot of the evidence that we need to prosecute a civil case are being held up pending the results of the investigation and the issuance of the report.
And you've gotten some word that this report from Michael Gaylor will be coming down soon?
We expect soon. I got an email from State's Attorney Gaylor just a couple of days ago that he was checking on a few things to try to wrap things up from his end. As you and your viewers probably know, there's been some changes to the law last spring and summer as a result of the Floyd incident. One of those changes being that there's supposed to be an independent counsel now reviewing these cases and issuing their reports. It doesn't apply to my case because the law does not apply retroactively.
Right.
But Gaylor decided he should have others review his findings before he issues the report, and I'm in favor of that. So I give him credit for that, he's trying to be as thorough as possible, I think.
Now, the last time I saw you quoted in the media was in early June, when you said that West Haven police were ignoring your requests for information. And you said you had filed freedom of information requests. Have the West Haven police sent you information?
Yes. After I got the media involved, I got a call from West Haven's legal counsel, and that was cleared up pretty quickly.
And so what have they said about what, from their point of view, happened on January 15th?
Well, I have the West Haven police reports. I have the Norwalk police reports. What I'm missing is the state police reports, which are being held up. There wasn't a whole lot of new light shed on the situation from the vantage point of the West Haven police. They were there, they say, in a support role. And of course, they had several West Haven police on scene. They were involved in surrounding and containing Mubarak in his vehicle. And of course, they did nothing to de-escalate the situation and to have troopers put down their guns and act in what I would call a more reasonable manner.
Did West Haven police draw guns, or did they smash? Was it one of their force that smashed the passenger side window and shot a taser?
The taser was deployed by a state trooper, and a state trooper took a baton, I believe, from one of the West Haven cops to break the window. The whole case, the whole fact scenario is screwy from my vantage point, because going back to the beginning, Mubarak went into an AT&T store in Norwalk to take a phone, to steal a phone. He had this steak knife with him, but he didn't threaten anyone. They ended up trying to sell him a phone. He tried to take the phone, but they took it back from him. They ran his credit. I mean, you don't run credit of someone who's trying to rob you. It doesn't make any sense. And the store manager reported to the police that Mubarak looked messed up, and it looked like he may have been on drugs. And then Mubarak got into the Lyft vehicle, as your viewers may recall, at the AT&T store. They pulled into a Shell station. There was an altercation. Mubarak ended up taking the car. But the reason he probably took the car is because he was fearful of his own life, because the Lyft driver pulled a gun on him.
Wow.
And just as this was happening, a West Haven police cruiser was in the area, heard the call, went into the parking lot.
West Haven or Norwalk?
I'm sorry, Norwalk.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, this was a Norwalk cop. Saw what was going on in the parking lot, saw someone with a gun, didn't know if that was Mubarak or someone else. Mubarak got into the driver's seat from the back seat and took the car. So, Mubarak was a paranoid schizophrenic, and he was probably totally freaking out at this point. And that, I'm sure, accounts for the fact that he appeared to be messed up while this transaction was going on in the AT&T store.
I assume you learned all this from the Norwalk police?
Norwalk and West Haven.
Right.
But this part of it primarily from Norwalk.
Right.
And dispatch from Norwalk reported that there had been a carjacking with a knife, which is not true. And that's what caused the state police to pick up the pursuit from Norwalk to West Haven when the Norwalk police had called it off. Norwalk police said it wasn't violent. State police mistakenly said that it was a carjacking with a knife. Now, Mubarak did have a steak knife with him, but he didn't use the steak knife to take the car. So all things considered, there never should have been a chase. Even if there was a chase started, going at 90 or 100 miles an hour, it should have been called off. It's not like they couldn't find Mubarak to arrest him later. they had video of him at that point at the gas station and at the AT&T store. They could identify him. So this was just a whole.
And they had his credit card as he tried to get the phone.
I'm sorry?
You had said they had his credit card as he tried to apply for the phone.
No, he didn't. He couldn't get a phone because he didn't have an ID and didn't have a credit card.
Oh, I see. He did.
But they asked him, to run his credit.
Oh, okay.
So they could sell him a phone.
So they didn't have his name. I see.
Yeah.
So he goes on the highway. The police chase after him. Everybody's going at a huge rate of speed. The police allege that he tried to ram police cars. Is anything other than their word on that?
I don't think, you have to consider it's a 19-year-old kid who's totally out of his mind at this point, a paranoid schizophrenic. So did he intend to ram a police car? I don't think so. They're going side by side at 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. Can a car get clipped going that rate of speed? Of course. Mm-hmm. And is Mubarak, paying particular attention at that point? He's trying to get as far away as fast as he can. So I'm not sure there was any intent on his part at that point.
So eventually they get to West Haven, exit 43. Mubarak pulls off, and then we have the trooper video that shows the car he was in eclipse some parked car, I guess. And then within a minute, he's surrounded by police.
Mubarak's car, the lift vehicle, struck the rear of another vehicle. And at that point was immediately surrounded by police. There were 3 or 4 police cars at that point. State trooper vehicle pulled up right against Mubarak's driver's side door. So Mubarak could not get out of the car. And this is at the underpass at Campbell Avenue. So it was up against the right side. So there was nowhere for Mubarak's car to go on the right side. The cops all jumped out with guns drawn, pointed at him. And the whole scenario lasted a little less than a minute from that point. The state trooper on the driver's side, that is Trooper North, yelled at Mubarak, and they're all yelling at him, get out, but there's no way for him to get out of the car. And he had his windows up.
That's, of course, very important that the windows were up.
Yes. So in police technical terms, Mubarak was contained and isolated at that point and posed no harm to anyone outside the vehicle. The only concern they should have had was Mubarak harming himself. But you don't shoot someone, obviously, to prevent that person from harming him or herself.
Right.
And then the window was broken on the passenger side. They tried to tase him. We're not sure if the taser worked or not. But as soon as the taser was deployed, the trooper on the passenger side yelled, "He's moving," referring to Mubarak. So when you get tased, you're going to move. And because they're still yelling at him, get out, I think maybe it's hard to tell from the video that he was reaching for his seatbelt to get out of, release his seatbelt so he could get out of the car finally somehow. But as soon as the trooper yelled, "He's moving," Trooper North on the driver's side shot him 7 times.
And we could see that very plainly. So he was in his seatbelt with the windows up.
Yes.
And what about the knife? What are you able to ascertain about that?
The knife was apparently on his lap. After Mubarak was shot, Trooper North broke out the rest of the window, reached in, you can see this on the video,
right,
pulled out the knife and said, "I have the knife." Before Mubarak was shot, Trooper North yelled, he has a knife, he has a knife. But everyone knew he had a knife because that was on dispatch. What they didn't say in dispatch was that it's a steak knife. I'm not sure it made any difference. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter whether he had an axe with him or a machete. It all amounts to the same thing. He's not going to hurt anyone outside the car.
When he's in a seatbelt and the windows are up. I mean, that was extraordinary.
Yeah. And even if he didn't have the seatbelt on, and even if he's holding the knife up, yelling at the cops and shaking his hands around, so what?
Exactly.
No one can say that they have a reasonable belief that they are in fear for their own safety.
So we'll hear pretty soon, you think, whether the state prosecutor wants to indict on this and bring it to trial. But what about the question of whether Trooper North would get fired? Has the family heard from the Governor Lamont, about this killing by the state police officer who is nominally under Governor Lamont's direction?
I don't believe so. Early on, there was an informal statement issued by the lieutenant governor that she feels for the family, has sympathy for the family, but that was the extent of it.
I'm thinking about other cases with like Floyd in Minnesota, where the mayor of Minneapolis almost immediately, issued a statement of outrage and called for dismissal of, I think it was Chauvin, the man who put his knee on the neck of George Floyd. And then a couple of days later said that he should be put on trial for murder. But I haven't heard any elected official in the state of Connecticut even call for dismissal of North. Am I right, or has that happened?
You are correct. And at the rallies and demonstrations that occurred this past summer, many of which I attended, I stood in close proximity with elected officials who all denounced police violence and shootings. And then I would speak and say, okay, it's time for you to speak up about this case and call for the trooper to be fired and call for a prosecution, and crickets. So, it's hard for a lot of these elected officials to show their spines. We'll put it that way.
And speaking about West Haven, I learned much more in 15 minutes talking with you now than we were able to get from the West Haven police, in a year, despite frequent requests. At a corporation council, at a city council meeting, the corporation council advised people on the council not to speak. Now, as we mentioned in the George Floyd killing, political leaders were out front on this. Is there something special about Connecticut law that makes it improper for elected officials to speak out about these abuses?
No, they are just spineless, and they should be out front about it. Everyone talks about accountability and transparency, but as I always say, talk is cheap. There's a commission now on police accountability and transparency. I've appeared before that commission, and the chief state's attorney was on that same video call that I was. And I made a brief statement asking about accountability and transparency, asking for the commission to make a statement about it. And then there was some time for questions. Indicative of all this, I think there were 12 or 14 officials on this call. A couple of state representatives, representatives from several police departments, and the chief state's attorney. I did not get one single question from any of them. And you'd think they would take that opportunity to ask me something about Mubarak's case. Not a single question. So that's indicative of what we're facing.
Just two more questions. So you mentioned you've spoken at protest rallies organized by family and activists. What has been your message?
That the family, first and foremost, wants justice for their dead son. They want accountability, which has been horribly lacking up to this point, at least. And then ultimately, compensation for their tremendous loss. And nothing happens in Connecticut overnight. As you know, there hasn't been a prosecution of a cop for a killing in 20 or 21 years. I mean, it's just horrendous and ridiculous. I think the last time a cop was prosecuted in Connecticut was for assault, because a cop beat up a suspect who had been handcuffed. Mm. So it's just silliness in this state. I hope that things change with Mubarak's case. We just saw what happened with Jacob Blake. There's no prosecution. So I hope the change comes in small steps and increments. I hope this will foster some degree of change.
Finally, there's going to be a rally in West Haven on Friday, the 15th of this month, a year after the killing, starting around 4 p.m. Will you be at that rally?
I hope to. It's my intention to. Frankly, it depends in part on my schedule. I'm scheduled to appear before a judge for a court hearing at 3 o'clock that same day. And judge isn't likely to say, we'll postpone this because you have to go to a rally. So I'm hoping to make it quick and get to the rally at 4 o'clock in West Haven.
And that's going to be at the killing site, right off exit 43.
Correct.
The GPS for those people who go that way, it's 820 Campbell Avenue, 4 p.m. in West Haven on the 15th. Thanks so much for speaking with me.
Very happy to be here, and thank you.
Finally, Palestinian activist Issa Amro thanking people for the Twitter storm that was done on his behalf on January 5th, the day before the end of his trial.
My dear friends and supporters, thank you very much for organizing the Twitter storm tonight in support and solidarity with me against the military court. Tomorrow, Wednesday, January 6th, is the verdict hearing of my trial, which was going on since 4 years. They want to shut me off. They want to stop me from resisting the Israeli occupation peacefully. They don't want me to organize my community against the Israeli occupation. With your support, with your protection, with your solidarity and backup, I will go tomorrow stronger, stand firm in front of the judge, and I will tell him that I'm not alone in the struggle. If you put me in jail, going into jail means that it's energy for many people to continue struggling for the Palestinian rights till we end the occupation, make Israel accountable for its human rights violation, and Palestinians get their freedom, justice, and equality. I promise you that I will not give up, and the Palestinians will not coexist with the occupation, and the occupation will end very, very soon with your support, with your solidarity, and with our determination as Palestinians and as solidarity groups.
On January 6th, Amro was convicted in Israeli Apartheid military court. He was convicted on 6 counts, one of them the very serious crime of participating in a rally without a permit. Sentencing will be in February. Amro remarked that the judge has been noticing all the comments on social media, so please keep it up. That's our program for today. Stay safe, folks, but keep active. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.